Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're rediving into a topic that's both complex and incredibly important: racial segregation in America's major cities. Now, you might hear the word segregation and think of black and white photos from the civil rights era. But the truth is, the legacy of those times and the policies that created it are still very much with us today, shaping our neighborhoods, our schools, and our lives in ways we might not even realize. So, how do we even measure segregation? It's not as simple as just looking at a map. Researchers use something called the dissimilarity index. Imagine a city is perfectly integrated. In that case, every single neighborhood would reflect the city's overall racial makeup. The dissimilarity index measures how far a city is from that ideal. It tells us the percentage of a specific group, say black residents, who would need to move to a different neighborhood to achieve perfect integration. A score of 0 is perfect integration, while a score of 100 is complete segregation. Generally, a score above 60 is considered very high. With that in mind, let us explore some of the metropolitan areas that consistently rank among the most segregated in the United States. And we'll start in the Midwest, in a city often called the Windy City, Chicago. The Chicago metropolitan area, which includes surrounding suburbs, has one of the highest black-white dissimilarity scores in the nation, often hovering around 75. This means a staggering 75% of black residents would have to move to achieve an even racial distribution across the metro area. Chicago's segregation is deeply rooted in history. Practices like redlining in the 20th century, where banks refused to offer mortgages in black neighborhoods, and restrictive covenants, which were legal agreements preventing people of color from buying homes in white areas, created stark dividing lines. You can still see these lines today. Think of the Dan Ryan Expressway, often called a concrete manifestation of the color line, separating predominantly black communities on the south side from other parts of the city. This segregation isn't just about where people live. It impacts everything from school funding and job opportunities to access to fresh food and healthcare. Next, we head east to Detroit, the Motor City. Detroit's story is similar to Chicago's, with a black-white dissimilarity index also in the high 70s. The city's history is marked by a massive white flight to the suburbs, especially after the 1967 riots. This exodus was fueled by racial tensions and facilitated by new highways that made suburban living easier. The result was a city proper that became overwhelmingly black, surrounded by predominantly white suburbs. This stark city-suburb divide is one of the most defining features of segregation in the Detroit metro area. The famous 8 Mile Road isn't just a road. For decades, it has served as a powerful psychological and racial dividing line. The economic consequences have been severe, creating vast disparities in wealth, resources, and public services between the city and its surrounding suburbs. Let's stay in the Rust Belt and travel to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. You might be surprised to see Milwaukee on this list, but it consistently has one of the highest black-white dissimilarity scores in the country, often approaching 80. Yes, that means 8 out of every 10 black residents would need to move to desegregate the city. Milwaukee's segregation has been called hypersegregation by sociologists, meaning black residents are highly segregated across multiple measures simultaneously. They're clustered in specific areas, isolated from white residents and concentrated in a compact urban core. This intense separation has led to some of the nation's worst racial disparities in incarceration, education, and health outcomes. It's a stark reminder that segregation isn't just a southern or big city problem. It's a deeply American one. Now, let's head down to the south, to Birmingham, Alabama. Birmingham was a central battleground during the Civil Rights Movement, and its struggles with segregation are a core part of its identity. While the city has made incredible strides, the metropolitan area still shows significant signs of segregation. Here, the pattern is a familiar one: a majority black city center surrounded by whiter, more affluent suburbs. historical zoning laws, and the legacy of Jim Crow created neighborhoods that are still identifiable by race today. This separation perpetuates economic inequality, with suburban communities often having better-funded schools and more robust local economies, while city residents face concentrated poverty and under-resourced public services. Moving over to the East Coast, we find Newark, New Jersey, part of the massive New York City metropolitan area. The New York-Newark metro area is a fascinating case. While it's one of the most diverse places on Earth, it's also highly segregated. Newark itself has a very high dissimilarity index. Like Detroit, Newark experienced significant white flight in the mid-20th century, leaving behind a city with a high concentration of minority residents and poverty. The segregation here is complex, involving not just black and white residents, but also a large and diverse Hispanic population. Different groups often live in distinct ethnic enclaves, creating a mosaic of cultures that are vibrant but also separated. This separation impacts political power, resource allocation, and the ability of different groups to build social and economic bridges. Another city in the region, Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love, also grapples with a deep history of racial division. With a black-white dissimilarity score often above 70, Philadelphia's neighborhoods are starkly divided. The city's layout tells a story of industrial boom and bust, with working-class neighborhoods that were once ethnically white becoming bathed centers of the black community through waves of migration. As in other cities, discriminatory housing practices locked these patterns into place. Today, you can cross a single street in Philadelphia and feel like you've entered an entirely different world, with dramatic shifts in the racial makeup, housing quality, and commercial activity of the area. This impacts everything from policing practices to political representation. Finally, let's look at Cleveland, Ohio, another key player in the Rust Belt. Cleveland mirrors the patterns we've seen in Chicago and Detroit. Its dissimilarity index is also very high, reflecting a deep divide between the city and its suburbs, and even within the city itself. The Cuyahoga River has historically served as a geographic and racial dividing line. The consequences are familiar: concentrated poverty, underfunded schools in minority neighborhoods, and significant disparities in health and wealth. The economic decline of the manufacturing industry hit black communities in Cleveland particularly hard, as they were often the last hired and first fired, and segregation limited their ability to move to areas with new job growth. So, what's the common thread here? It's not just about people choosing to live with others who look like them. That's a vast oversimplification. The patterns we see today are the direct result of decades of discriminatory policies and practices: redlining, restrictive covenants, blockbusting, and the strategic placement of highways. These weren't accidents. They were intentional designs to separate people by race. And the effects are devastating. Segregation concentrates poverty, which leads to a cycle of under-resourced schools, limited job opportunities, poor health outcomes, and higher crime rates. It starves certain communities of investment while channeling resources to others. It also deepens social and political divides. When we don't interact with people from different backgrounds, it's easier to rely on stereotypes and harder to build the empathy and understanding needed for a healthy democracy. But this isn't just a story of doom and gloom. Cities across the country are trying to address this legacy. They're implementing inclusionary zoning policies that require new housing developments to include affordable units. They're investing in transportation to connect isolated neighborhoods to job centers. And community organizations are working tirelessly to build bridges and fight for equitable resources. The first step to solving a problem is understanding it. These numbers, these dissimilarity scores, aren't just statistics. They represent millions of lives shaped by the geography of race. They tell the story of unequal access to the American dream. By understanding where we are and how we got here, we can have a more honest conversation about where we need to go next. It's about creating cities where your zip code doesn't determine your destiny. Thanks for watching and taking the time to explore this difficult but crucial topic with me. What are your thoughts on this? Do you see these patterns in your own city? Let me know in the comments below. And if you found this video informative, please give it a like. And subscribe for more deep dives into the issues that shape our world. See you next time.